Hello and welcome to the first beer review video that I'm going to hopefully make into a weekly series. And I'm going to review a beer and then do whatever the hell else I want to. It may be related to the beer that we're talking about. It may not be. I'm going to do whatever I want. So, our first beer that we are starting out with is Pirate Beer. This is a Belgian strong ale. It is 10.5%, and it is brewed by Van Steenberg. Steenberg? I don't know. In Belgium, product of Belgium. And the Van Steenberg is a brewery that dates back to 1784. And this beer in particular, and probably some of their other ones, uses old brewing techniques that we are going to talk about a little bit later. In a minute. So let's crack this thing open. Okay. I will show you the bottle cap perhaps later. But I can't get up. I cannot get up, and it's missing. Here's the bottle cap. Okay, so you're technically supposed to be pouring this. It's preferred in a tulip glass. But I don't have one, so we'll work on that. But for now, we're just pouring it in a normal glass. I'm not a professional on pouring any beers, but we'll work on it. We'll work on that. I know that, just based on the pictures and everything, that it is supposed to have a pretty big head. It's supposed to be foamy. It's got an amber color to it. It's orange. It's got a golden glow almost. Again, a big head, nice and foamy. It's pretty bubbly still. Can't really see it, but, you know, you get the idea. It smells really sweet. Like, it smells like it, probably because it is so high in alcohol, it smells like a wine almost. Like, maybe, like a white wine. But I'm mostly getting some fruit notes. So, cheers. Ooh. That is a beer that bites like wine. Almost liquor. But not in like in a mead way. Like, it's not that sweet. I mean, it's really just strong. It tastes like alcohol. It's really good though. For how much alcohol it is, it's not bitter or anything. Maybe very, very, very slightly. I wouldn't say it's sweet where it's like, oh, this is easy to drink. A lot of people think sweet equals easy to drink. Not necessarily. This is still very, like, hard to drink, I would say. Especially being an imported beer, definitely tastes, and just like the percentage of it also, it gives it that like celebratory kind of vibe. Where I'm going to sit down and I'm going to have this beer with dinner or something. This would be really good with dinner or after dinner. It's a little bit more hoppy, but not hoppy in a bitter way. Hoppy in like a light way, a light juicy way. So I would rate this out of 10 an 8. I would give this an 8. Because it's not something that I would sit here and drink consistently. I would only have one of these. And it's not easy to drink, which is not necessarily what I'm looking for most of the time. I like whenever it's complicated, and there's definitely complicatedness to it, but I think it being higher in alcohol, that's kind of more of what you can taste rather than anything else. But it's really good still. It's very unique. It's very fruit-forward. It's very interesting. I already said unique, but it's just interesting, and that is something that I like, personally. So that's what this other part of this video is going to be about. We are going to have a little bit of a brief beer history. A little bit. And other things. It's going to be very brief, I promise you. So, what inspired me to get this beer is this book right here, Artisan Beers. Just talks about all kinds of different kinds of beers that microbreweries and stuff make these days. And this beer was in it. And so I read the section that featured this beer, and then the next day I was in Maine, and I found this beer at the store. So I was like, clearly, I have to buy it. This seems something that's historically important, even though this beer low-key came out in 1988, I think. But the brewery is old. 1784, that's pretty old. And the techniques that they use and that they talk about still goes back to honoring the old traditions of how they made beer. And so one of the first things I want to talk about, which is kind of what I've got going on here, is IPAs. They talked about IPAs in Indian Pale Ale, and I always assumed that Indian Pale Ales came from India, because it's in the name. It actually isn't from India. It is a beer that is exported to India. So back in the day, I'm talking about the 1700s, porter was one of the most popular beers that London would export specifically. And it was exported via ships, obviously. That's how everybody exported anything. And then here is what I assume is the voyage from London to India. I'm not sure if this is completely accurate to the time period, but I would assume. However, because of the warmer temperatures of India, obviously because London's probably freezing, and India is probably quite warm, the porter barrels on the ships didn't maintain like the right temperature that makes them taste good, so then they would get to India and then they would taste stale, and they would taste sour, and they probably would just taste gross. So the Indians are probably like, this is nasty, like this is not good beer, why do you guys like this? And so to fix that, this guy, George Hodgson, I don't know. He created the India Ale. And so what he did in order to make the beers palatable to India after exporting and being on these boats for however long, I don't know how long the journey was, but I'm sure quite a long time, he amped up the alcohol content to preserve it, obviously, because alcohol preserves all kinds of stuff. He added more hops and more sugar as well, because those are also really preservative things. And so it created this new beer that was being exported to India, most likely from London and from probably eventually other places, the IPA, the India Pale Ale, and that's how a lot of the current IPAs get their characteristic features, being bitter, being hoppy, being bubbly, and being relatively strong compared to other beers. And so where I get the pirate beer is from this book, is it calls this beer, the pirate beer, an IPA. Which is interesting to me because it doesn't say anywhere in here that it's an IPA. It's a Belgian ale, which I guess ale is broad. But I think where they're getting at is that it is brewed in the same way that the India Pale Ale was brewed by that frickin' George guy. It's bringing back the idea of being on a pirate ship and obviously having your little pirate little guy. What is also really interesting about this beer is I kind of alluded to it being similar to a wine, and that's kind of because it is. Not only in its percentage of alcohol and the way it tastes or whatever, it uses wine yeast to brew it, and it also has secondary fermentation. So whenever it gets put into the bottle, it keeps fermenting, and so the longer you let it sit on a shelf or whatever, the more it can ferment, and the more that flavors can become interesting. And they also sell it in a huge wine bottle looking thing. It's just interesting how similar sometimes beers and wine can be. So now I'm going to shift to something completely separate than this beer, and it's going to talk about a different brewery, and I want you all to be aware of this, because I was duped. So we're talking about Sam Adams. Samuel Adams. He is known as, apparently, the father of the American Revolution, an American figure in history. That's all I'm going to say. And he also worked on his family's brewery, and so my assumption is that this brewery, the current one that you're looking at right now, was his original brewery. What this book informed me, that is not true. That is not true. Because this brewery, Samuel Adams' line of the Boston Bugle, Boston Beer Company, this was a guy in the 80s. Jim Koch, in the 80s, is the one who founded Samuel Adams Brewing Company. So Boston Brewing Company itself even opened in 1984. But I thought this entire time that it was a historic beer company. Every time I cracked open a Sam Adams, I'm like, I'm tasting a little bit of history. Yeah, 1980s history maybe, which is ancient enough to these times, but not 1700s ancient. Anyways, I love this brewery. I'm not dogging on this brewery by any means. I like this brewery. It's yummy. It's good. I'm just saying don't be duped by marketing, I suppose, in general. My last closing point, take a drink for this next one. We're going to go off the rails a little bit and talk about something that I read in a fiction book. It referenced back to alcohol history. Even Cowgirls Get the Blues. This is a book about lesbian cowgirls, among very, very many other things. It's really interesting, and that's all I'm going to say about it. But I was reading a part of it today, but what I'm going to talk about, and that's why we're going off the rails, is kissing history. The history of kissing. So I'm going to read you a quote. Tradition informs us that kissing, as we know it, was invented by medieval knights for the utilitarian purpose of determining whether their wives had been into the mead barrel while the knights were away on duty. The concept of the kiss being invented, first of all. Being invented because knights were trying to make sure their wives were not drinking the mead. So a kiss is the first breathalyzer. Even remotely looking this topic up, even slightly, this kind of seemed made up by the author, which kind of seems like he does that sometimes, but this is a work of fiction, and that is not the invention of kissing. But I thought that was interesting, and it goes back to medieval knights, and alcohol, and something else interesting that I wanted to talk about, so I did. And so, that is all that I had to say for this video. I hope this was maybe educational, and maybe it was just bad information that you did not care to know. But at the very least, I hope it was educational, and I hope that if you can find this beer somewhere, you give it a try. You give it a try. You gotta be a little bit bold to try this one, but... So if that's what you're looking for, and you want to try something different, and you want to feel like you're on a ship. You want to feel like you got some scurvy going on. If that's what you're wanting to go for, and emulate the 1700s and the 80s, then I would recommend this beer. So anyways, join me next time, where I think I might be doing a little bit of karaoke. And I am not good at karaoke, nor have I ever really done karaoke, so we're gonna see how that goes. Until next beer.